Thank you so much for joining us. It's a pleasure to have you on the show. And what a revolutionary school. It's beautiful. Congratulations.
I'm really glad you enjoyed taking a look around the school.
So when I walked in, I felt like I was in a design institute as much as I'm in a school. So clearly there's a purpose for that.
One thing we've done away with is all traditional models of schools usually have a long corridor, and I don't know if you know, but schools, hospitals and prisons were thought of at the same time in the industrial age. So they all have these long corridors and classrooms on either side, prison cells on either side, or hospital rooms on either side. So they were all thought of as a one-size-fits-all model. So we've tried to do away with that model at Ascent. We've actually changed that whole model or flipped that model around on its head. And there are no corridors in the whole school. It's all central design studio spaces that we have, that we use flexibly, openly for big groups to come together, for a classroom to divide into two small groups as well. And that's a design studio space. And all of our classrooms are around those design studio spaces. So they're all around a central space, which is also usable space.
So, your program talks about tapping each child's potential and sort of customizing a program for each child. How does that work?
So our program is, we call it an individualized instruction program. What I mean by that is, it doesn't mean that everyone's doing a different math problem in the classroom. What that means is the math problem given to everyone is the same math problem, but everyone is stretching to their own abilities. So to give you a practical example of, say, when we learned in school the concept of area, volume and perimeter, a math problem is given saying find the area of the classroom the kids are in at Ascent. Suppose they'll find the area of the classroom. Maybe 3 of those students in the classroom finish that math problem and find the area of the classroom within the first 10 minutes of the class. Those same 3 students will be asked to find the perimeter of the class or the volume of that same space, while the rest of the 15 other kids or 14 other kids in the classroom will still be working on finding the area. So we're able to individualize the program and stretch everyone individually is what our program will be.
So when you talk about the PYP program, the primary years program, the fear is that every school makes their own sort of khichdi, if I may say so, of the PYP program, where they take some guidelines from the IB board and they sort of customize it to their school. So how do you know that each school is getting it right, or who's getting it right?
That's a great point. I mean, I think your understanding of the IB philosophy and IB framework is really thorough as well. So IB, a lot of people mistaken it to be a curriculum. It is not a curriculum. They don't give you books to do or books to read or chapters to be done. The IB gives you a framework, especially for the PYP, they give you a broad framework saying this is the framework you can fit your school within. Within that framework, you can use any curriculum you want. You could use a state board curriculum if you wanted to. You can use your own curriculum, whatever you wanted to. For us, I think one thing that's different about us is that we have a partner school. So we partner with a school in Seattle. The name of the school is University Child Development School. It's 100-plus-year-old school in Seattle. And it's a school that's based in education research. So they're looking at what's going on in education research. What do we know about our brains, how our brains are developing, what more do we know about our kids' brains, and how we can use that research in the classroom right away. So that's one thing that we really liked about that school in Seattle, and we're inspired by that school and based on the philosophy of that school as well. What we feel is that the IB or the PYP program gives a chance for teachers to take ownership of the curriculum and build a curriculum, which is what innovative, passionate, driven teachers want to do, or innovative educators want to do, is build curriculum. This is an application-based school. We're not teaching kids a skill and then asking them to do something. We're doing a project with our kids and asking them to apply the skill while they're learning it, not once they learn it and then they apply it.
Okay. In fact, one would say that the 11th and 12th, which is the IB program, certified program, according to international guidelines, very strictly, that in a sense it becomes tougher than your local board as well, right?
For sure. See, whenever in whichever setting a student or even us adults were to apply our mind, it always makes it more challenging for us. If it's something where you have to just read something and regurgitate that, it's never challenging. Even in our workplace, we don't do the same thing over and over again. In the same way, the IB exam isn't a complete content-based exam, it's a concept-based exam. And whenever you're applying concepts, you have to use your mind, you have to stretch your mind, which is what the IB exam does, and I think the IB diploma program does. This is a math problem, how will you solve it? So you need to decide whether you need to use equations, whether you need to use what formulas you need to use, where it comes from. And they don't really say this is an addition problem, this is a subtraction problem, they say this is a math problem. You can solve it however you want. And that's what makes it more challenging and more, I think more than challenging, makes it more real world based, wherein that's what the real world looks like, that's what problems in work look like now for all of us. is that this is a problem. It's not a math problem. It's not a science problem. It's a problem. That's my answer to your question. That we create a space for kids to fail. We want them to fail at everything they do. A lot of things that they do, not everything they do. A lot of things they do as well. And what we want them to do is learn from that failure and change what they're doing, do it differently as well.
So your fees, 10 lakhs, which, apart from the American school, German school, you're talking about a very, very high fee. A lot of the other IB schools are not so expensive. So you're kind of limiting your demographic to a very elite crowd.
Parents in our school are obviously financially well settled and are grounded socially in their sort of social circles or finance circles where they're at. But that also means they're not in this culture which I see in a lot of schools of one-upmanship. So our parents, like I said, are financially and socially well grounded in the places they are at. And they're not in this race of one-upmanship of each other where they're trying to show that if you had this kind of a birthday party or this kind of a thing, I'll have this. That.
Sure.
They're very well settled in their lives and they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. And all of them understand that their kids need to value what they're getting, may it be in the form of money, may it be in the form of education, may it be food, whatever it is. So they're giving kids the value system that whatever you have is valuable. It's possible for us to run this kind of a program because you have a limited number of kids.
Yeah.
If we had a larger number of kids, it wasn't possible for us to run this kind of a program as well, which is why we have a small number of kids in a classroom and 2 teachers, where we get to know the child really well. In all aspects, we need to know the child, get to know him very, very well to be able to run this kind of a program.
Are your students going to be competitive enough and sort of motivated enough to get those results? Is your program going to prove itself?
Sure. So I think every school is set up to send kids to good universities. I think that's a given. That's why you set up a school so that you can have kids learn and go into universities.
Yeah.
At Ascend, what we want to do is we want to give kids love of learning. We want them to love learning and be in charge of their own learning process. So when we're able to have a student understand themselves and their own learning style really well, they can thrive in any setting they go into. Maybe a traditional setting of 50 students in one classroom, or maybe a smaller setting in a foreign university where there are only 18 kids or 10 kids in a small lecture hall, and then or in a small classroom they're doing that as well. Secondly, we're giving them real world exposure where we're having outside experts come and work with them and give them a sense of what it's like to work outside the school as well. So we're having, like I said, we have architects come in, we've had professors from IIT come in and teach our kids design thinking and what design thinking process is as well. So we have a lot of outside experts come in, and we have had people from the local government offices and come and talk to kids about the Meaty River. So our kids did a whole Meaty River cleanup project. So we give them real world exposure, which prepares them for university as well. And I think universities now, especially foreign universities, are now really looking for a diverse mix of students. They're not looking for 25 students from this one school. They're looking for one student from this one kind of school. They're looking for another student from another school, another country, another place as well. And what they want to see is students who have done authentic community changing projects. When you do a project for 6 months or almost a year, where kids work on a project for a year almost, community outreach project, see an impact, create a change and measure that impact is when you're actually doing real work. And that's what I think universities now want to see, is that are kids doing actual work, or they just go into this one place for 2 months and doing this house building project and come back and just being in the same setting and not really using that anywhere. The IBDP is one way of making sure of that kids are prepared for the real world as well. The IBDP is an exam that the kids give, students give across the world. Yeah. And it's that same exam that everyone gives, and our students will also give that same exam, which will help them prepare and come onto the same sort of platform that a lot of other students will across the world, and will prepare them to get into university and competitive exams as well. So I think the IBDP does a lot of that for us automatically as well, and we as a school are focused towards giving our kids as much rigor as possible. And again, coming back to rigor, I think that's what we're talking about at the crux of this as well, is that rigor doesn't really mean doing the same math problem 100 times. It has changed from the time that when you and I went to school probably. It was maybe doing the same math problem 100 times. Rigor means once you've understood a concept of math, you're moving to the next concept. You're not being made to do that same math concept 100 times just because the rest of the kids are coming up to your level.
Sure.
What happens in traditional models is you're doing that math concept, and if you've understood that as a student, as a quick student in math maybe, you're being made to do that same math problem 50 more times because the rest of the kids haven't come to your level. When they all come, then you move to the next one. The same thing will repeat again as well with you as a student. Whereas Ascend, what will happen even at the younger grades, forget college, even at younger grades, is that if you finish understood that math problem, like I told you, you're given the next challenge. So because kids are used to this sort of a setting, they are able to take the next challenge up in the real world or in university as well.
Do you take any inspiration from the traditional board exams and the traditional schools in Bombay?
So I think we're a school that's not married to one model of education, that we're a Montessori school or we're a Reggio school or we're a Indian traditional school. We're looking at what works best for kids and what works for their education and picking that up from that model. So a lot of the things you'll see at Ascend have been picked up from Montessori. So we do a lot of art, a lot of coloring. We give a lot of fine motor and gross motor with the younger kids as well. we've also learned a lot from Reggio Emilia, which is a sort of philosophy of education that came out of Italy, which believes in art and trying to use art and expression to learn writing and to learn math as well. So we do a lot of art and drawing and designing to learn other subjects as well. And we've learned a lot of things from the Indian system as well, wherein we do a lot of math early on. Our kids start looking at the tables or math facts when they're in first and second standard. They start learning the tables. And we understand that there's some importance on rote memorization as well. It's not that we tell kids nothing is required to be rote memorized. We've learned a lot from that. Even our science curriculum is really informed by local curriculum, local standards. So we look at the ICSE standards, we look at the CBSE standards, we look at NCERT standards as well, and then build our curriculum based on those standards and build it from then on, not on those, but from then on. Our library is the nerve center of the whole school. Our kids, most of them go to the library after school and check out books every day and read books home as well. So writing and reading are big parts of our school and are strong pillars that we've based our program on. And like I said, kids start writing right from when they start school, and we're able to give them tools to, again, learn along the way, and for us to give them feedback as to how they can become better writers, become better readers. And while we're doing this, we're keeping that love of writing and reading intact. That's our biggest thing, where we want them to love writing and love reading and then learn the skill along the way.
But clearly, your philosophy has nothing to do with because I said so.
Yeah, our philosophy is based on the why. We always want to know the why. We want to know why there's no falsity in the whole school. We want to know why I'm doing this math problem. Our kids always ask why, and we're able to tell them the why behind it, which I think makes learning most powerful. I think is knowing the why behind it. Even we as adults, when we learn something, we want to know why.
Yeah.
And when you know the why behind anything, you will never forget that, is what I think.
But you know, you're creating a big problem for parents at home because they'll come back and say, no, but you know, there's no I told you so.
Yeah,
why? Why do we have to do this? And why do we have to do that?
Parents do, I mean, once kids start or students start going to Ascend, they do find it hard to leave them at home and say, you can't come with me because I'm going here.
Yeah.
And they always ask why. But I think something, I mean, to do with parenting, I think, coming to a whole different topic of parenting, I think it's also to do with parenting styles, I think, as well.
Yeah.
A lot of parents today want their kids to know why. I mean, they want to say that you cannot have this because you only have these 3 choices and these are the 3 choices you can make. You can choose one among these 3, you can't have the 4th one because it's not possible.
Yeah.
And parents have that sort of parenting style, and we've seen that with a lot of our parents, that they're really clear with their kids about what is possible, what's not possible, and what boundaries are there. Because even at school, when you look at our classrooms, they're huge. Each of our classrooms is around 1,000 square feet each.
Yeah.
And you have 18 kids in them. You can imagine a sort of 4 and 5-year-old kids in 1,000 square feet space.
Yeah.
You would imagine them running around the whole space, but that doesn't happen. We're able to engage kids and set boundaries, saying, right now, for us, the time is to read. So we're all going to read. You can pick a book to read that you want, but we're all reading right now. We're not doing anything else.
And all within a space which is bigger than most flats in Bombay. In a single classroom which is bigger than most flats in Bombay.
The space is something that is really big, and we really like that. We wanted, when we designed the building, our architect, who's again from Seattle, who designed the same partner school that we partnered with, Don Carlson, he really wanted to have a sense of space within the building. That's why we have such a different space, wherein we want them to feel that this is bigger than most spaces they've been in, and there is space for them to run around, for them to move about, not just run around, but move about as well. That's why the building looks so different. And we want kids to be moving within that framework and learning and love learning. That is the crux of our school, that we want kids to love learning. And once they have that, they can learn outside school as well. School is not the only place where you can learn. Right now, I mean, I as an adult have learned so many things which I've learned after my education is over. And these kids who are entering this digital age, or not entering, who are entering this age of artificial intelligence, literally, will have the freedom to learn whatever they want, as long as they're willing to learn, which is what we're giving them, that skill to love learning.
Thank you so much. It's been wonderful.
It was really great having this conversation with you. Thank you so much.
And all the very best.
Thank you so much.